Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on Birth the Middle Way. You are with Emma and myself today for a one-on-one conversation where we're going to explore a fun topic, as we like to do. So today we wanted to present this rhetoric, this idea, that personally I've heard come out of many mouths. And I would say that this rhetoric has some truths to it and it has some shadows to it, and it definitely has many nuances. And so, in the spirit of Birth the Middle Way, let's dance with the nuances. Let's go into it. Let's think a little deeper. Let's dance a little deeper. Let's explore a little deeper and play with the nuance, because that's what we like to do. So, the statement that we're going to unpack is birth is a mirror of where a woman is at.
Mm-hmm.
Birth reflects where a woman is at back to her.
Mm-hmm. And I will share right now as well that we have explored a quote similar to this in previous episodes, and I'll link that below in the description so you can listen to that one as well. We might be
Right,
weaving some threads from there if we can
right.
remember what we talked about from weeks ago, months ago.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. And so specifically with this rhetoric, with this statement, the place from which I've heard it come is this kind of teaching that, oh, like if you're a conscious enough woman, if that level of consciousness equates to a certain level of connection with our body, with our emotions, with our psyche, that we will thus elicit a positive outcome, a
If
good
you've
outcome.
done the work, your
Your
baby
baby will
will
live.
live. Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Exactly. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And there is a way that I think there's truth in that, and there's a way that we can find some accuracy in that statement,
Right.
but there's a lot of fallible layers, fallible nuances to that
Well,
phrasing.
or even harmful, right?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
harmful is like what I would actually like to advocate for, right?
Hmm.
Because that leaves a lot of women feeling really alone
Hmm.
in their experience, questioning why, like, what am I not getting? What am I not seeing? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my
Hmm.
body? What
Hmm.
didn't I see? What didn't I know
Hmm.
that caused? And like it's not only about a living baby. I've seen very much so women who have put so much care into a VBAC, a vaginal birth after cesarean section. Really showing up, trying to meet the emotions, trying to meet the psychology, trying to meet the stories, trying to tend to the body and receive all of the care physically, and still have another C-section
Hmm.
and have the grief of that but I tried so hard, I did everything to meet it,
Hmm.
and it's so, the way in which it's true, that statement is not in the realm of outcome in my perception. My perception of the truth of that statement is that regardless of outcome, the way in which a woman shows up to the birthing process and the integration of it,
Hmm.
regardless of outcome, reflects really more clearly, with a lot more depth and a lot more authenticity, I would say, where she's
Right.
at.
Right. And I think there's a piece that's important to acknowledge that a negative outcome doesn't just mean a dead baby or a dead mother. A negative outcome could be a very traumatic birth
Right,
as well.
right.
Yeah.
And so, the reason I have inspiration for this topic is you in many ways, and is what I've learned from you, and what I've learned from you in interacting with you. It's been very humbling, I would say, to see the depth with which you've gone.
Right.
and your ability to go there, right? Your ability to go there, to feel that level of pain, to meet
Mhm.
it, to not only feel and meet that level of pain, to speak it, to not only speak it in a circle, but to speak it publicly and to allow for an entire world to integrate with your story and project all over you,
Mhm.
good, bad, indifferent, project all over you. And instead of getting into even shadowy dynamics with people who are projecting onto you, you still take a breath and you say, that's not mine. And you come back to your process,
Mhm.
and that's where I can see how wise you are,
Right.
you know?
Thank you.
That's where I can see the depth with which I know that you prepared for your birth. Like I know it. I don't have to ask you the details, even though I know some of them. Like just the way that you're showing up here and now to integrate your birth,
Mhm.
is a reflection of where you're at as a woman. And so the same is true, on the other side, and it's not even about shaming, right? It's actually about understanding that at the end of the day, the invitation is really to look inwards and meet ourselves
Mhm.
before pregnancy, ideally during pregnancy, during birth, and definitely after.
Yeah.
Definitely after. Regardless if your birth was picture perfect, there is still a call for integration,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And
And
so like
where's the room in a statement like this of a woman's birth reflects where she's at? Where's the room for the wildness of birth,
right.
right? I had a conversation with a river a few days ago or a few weeks ago. And I prayed to her. I apologized to her because in my labor I had prayed to the river and I have a Substack about it, but prayed to the river, asked her for protection and support, and asked her to be there. I asked her for her guidance in my labor. And then my labor went the way that it did, and I was on life support, and I, was holding my dead child in my arms. And a few weeks ago, I went floating on a river close by. And before I went in, I prayed to her. I hadn't been in the water, I hadn't taken a bath, I hadn't done anything. And I, apologized to her and I just asked for her protection. And we ended up capsizing quite a few times and getting bashed up against these trees. And it was a little bit like I got a bit shaken up. And what she told me afterwards was amazing. And I'm just gonna read because I wrote it down.
Oh,
And the river responded to me by saying, where is it? It's here. And I told her how upset I was. I was like, I prayed to you again and look what happened. Oh my God. Like, am I saying the wrong things? Am I doing the wrong things? And she said, beautiful one, you trusted me to be what you wanted, not what I am. I am the glaciers, the ocean, the rivers, and the rain. I am wild and unpredictable. You asked me to be something I am not. And while I can do many things, I cannot do that. You asked for protection and safety, and here you stand. You prayed for medicine, so here it is. You placed your trust in me, and to trust is to know the truth of where you offer it. I am water, capable of both sustaining life and taking it, nurturing and destructive. To trust in me is to trust in birth and death, to know that we are all wild, unpredictable, and shrouded in mystery. Believe that we are who we say we are. And where is the room for that wildness, that space of a liminal portal, of a threshold that is unpredictable and it is wild? Where is the space for that to meet the work that a woman is doing before pregnancy, during birth, and postpartum?
right. And for that energy to be the very thing that teaches her,
Right.
that guides her, that influences the
Right.
next step, the next moment.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I guess like just like the word that comes to me is just like the capacity to surrender,
Hmm.
right? And so that's a very interesting thread though, because it's one of the main things that comes up, even in plant medicine spaces and in plant medicine ceremonies is
Hmm.
this theme around control and surrender. That intersection that people are oftentimes dancing with and playing with. And, the orientation of the human mind to want to control it, to want to have it all figured out.
And I think a statement like the one that you shared earlier of a woman's birth is a reflection of where she's at is an attempt at controlling, at
Uh-huh.
understanding what is
Um,
unknown, what can't be understood. It's an attempt
Definitely.
to state and hold this great mystery of if you are this kind of person, your birth will go well. If you are that kind of person, your birth will be sabotaged,
Right.
right? And what happens with the woman? Where does she fit? Where, maybe she's been doing work for over like decades and she's a therapist and she's sat in ayahuasca ceremonies and she's constantly doing the inner work. She has a daily, twice daily meditation practice and she ends up, having a baby that's transverse at the time of birth. What do you do with that? And is that a reflection? Is that a mirror? Or is it how we interact with it? Because this is also going off of that thread of, life is a mirror and everyone is a mirror. And I remember dissecting this when I was in a domestic violence situation and I was being, physically abused and verbally abused and all of these things. And I was like, how is this a reflection of me? What is this mirroring to me? And what it was mirroring was, I mean, my self-worth ultimately, but it wasn't me abusing myself. It wasn't mirroring that I'm a bad person. It was mirroring, hey, this is happening and look at how you're responding to it. You're not walking away. Why aren't you walking away? And I did. I attempted to speak and to dialogue and to explore it. And when that wasn't working, I did walk away. And then I did therapy afterwards to help resolve that. And I worked really in depth with all of these pieces, with Tao teachings, with all of these various healing modalities.
Right.
And the way that I navigated it afterwards was the reflection of where I was at,
Right.
you know?
And exactly. And yeah, I mean, all we can ever do is really be there, right? Be where we're at. But
Hmm.
ideally, we're contemplating, we're reflecting on
Hmm.
our life and on the things that are unfolding, and exactly like you said there, and it's not to put the blame on you, like you are the perpetuator of,
Hmm.
violence. Like, of course, there's responsibility in the other person's corner.
Hmm.
And, you know, the beautiful thing is the awareness of, oh, but I do have influence over this situation,
Right.
some influence, right?
Right.
And I think the same is true for birth. We do have some influence over it, you
Hmm.
know, like there are choices that are made that do have outcomes. We can't control those outcomes though.
Hmm.
And so all we can do is do our best in a moment and be where we're at. And it's so interesting, because it's like I think about like for myself and my own processes, and it's like, okay, I've had the births that I've had, and they've been beautiful and they've been healthy, and they happened at home and they happened in a
Hmm.
really like sovereign and empowering way. But a thread of truth in my experience anyway is actually that like my first birth is the birth in which I felt the most like empowered, to like oh, I trust birth and, I really am excited to experience it and I can't wait to feel it and to know it and to meet it. And like, yeah, there's definitely this like air of excitement. In my second pregnancy, I for sure processed more psychological content that was challenging and more fear. And now in this position, like I feel even more of that energy, of like okay, like birth is big, and like there's nothing that I've had in my experiences that would lead me to believe that something would go wrong, but like I've spoke that into this space before, like what makes me, so deserving of that grace,
Mm,
and so for me, having just even that thread of willingness, like my orientation is like I want to do some ceremony, I want to meet this kind of fear before I would even actually consider conceiving again. Not because I think that that fear met or unmet is going to equal a living or dead baby or a good
right.
or a traumatic birth, but actually because I feel as though that's the medicine of being a birthing woman. Whether I'm actively pregnant and preparing for birth or not is like that's
Mhm.
like actually the next layer of integration that's being invited for me,
Mm,
2 years out from my last birth is like, but keep meeting it, keep meeting it,
mhm,
and yeah, keep meeting it, like there's just all of these layers. And so I think that like the reason why I see harm in this rhetoric is because like again, if women aren't oriented towards that deeper contemplation, I think that for those women, it has more potential to be harmful.
mhm,
I think if you take that at surface value and just hear that statement and don't actually sit with it and don't actually go into it and like have the capacity in your own mind and consciousness to be like, that's how it's true for me, that's how it's not, and I can claim that and I can own that, and I'm not going to take the projections of another woman or sister and what how they're interpreting that,
mhm.
that can cause a lot of harm.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean,
so
it reminds me a lot of this. I mean, we've spoken about this before, but this idea of we create our reality.
exactly,
You
yeah,
know, and I actually, the more that because I've been reflecting on it, the more that I sit with that, the more I disagree with it. The
right.
more I would phrase it as we relate to our reality. We choose how we relate to our reality. We don't create every single thing,
Mhm.
and this is where, especially when trauma, tragedy, abuse, various things come into play, um, it's hard for me to grasp like the layers of that. It's one thing to take responsibility. And to me, again, that is responding. How are we in relationship to what is occurring in our lives? Are we taking time to reflect personally? Do we have the space to take time to reflect on what is coming up for us? Are we being curious and asking, insightful, thought-provoking questions? Are we being curious to what is presenting around us? Are we being curious to our relationship that we have currently with birth, whether we've given birth or we haven't yet, or we won't? Or we know people that have given birth and we have these projections or these ideas of how birth should or shouldn't go, or how a woman should or should not give birth.
Right.
And can we maintain that curiosity? Because this idea that we create our entire reality, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have probably said we create our reality, period, with a nice little
Mhm.
done. And the way that I'm sitting with it now, and as I'm speaking, I'm also checking myself, like, am I saying this because I'm upset with how my reality is right now because my son has passed away, and I want to say something or have something to validate that no, I didn't create my reality.
Right.
Why would I create that? And just, I guess, the older I get and the longer that I live, the more I see that, again, there's nuance there. If this
Right.
is a cosmic law of the universe, we create our reality. What do you mean by that? Universe, God, Mother Earth, Creator? What are the layers and the nuances of what that means? And for me, it really means, how are we in relationship to what our reality is? How are we questioning and speaking to and listening to what our reality is communicating with us?
Right. Right. And it's like, for me, like, okay, I'm trying to like as you're speaking, put myself in maybe like the minds or like the thought processes of people listening, you know, like trying to
Hmm.
get myself out of like Sam relating to Emma.
Hmm.
And it, you know, like explore this rhetoric. And it's like, okay, well, you have voiced, you know, in these conversations, your fear of stillbirth specifically and how that
Hmm.
was like specifically your fear, right? And I think
Yeah.
on that last episode, around the create your reality piece, that one
Hmm.
that we did speak into like the spiral and how we can get into these places of fearing our fear, right?
Hmm.
Did we get into that?
I think so, a little bit.
Okay, so to just
If
speak
not, speak to it
that
again.
thought,
Yeah.
yeah, so to
Yeah.
speak
Yeah.
that thought is like, you know, this idea of like, okay, like my energetics create my reality, my thoughts manifest
Hmm.
my reality, you know, this kind of rhetoric that is, it comes, it can be interpreted or people can get it, hung up on this piece of like, oh no, a fear is arising. I
Hmm.
need to shove it down and push it away because if I feed it, it's going to manifest
Hmm.
and I'm going to create that reality, you know?
Hmm.
And for me, in the work that I do specifically in birth preparation sessions, it's calling on the fear so that we can meet it, we can be curious about it, we can maybe explore the root of it. And specifically, one of the things I try to do is have an actionable plan around the fear.
Hmm.
You know, so for a lot of people like wanting to transfer to hospital or, you know, whatever that might be,
Hmm.
to try to have, you know, a plan around that. And for me, I find that that pacifies that energetic of the fear. And, you know, you know, we don't know how that influences manifestation, or at least
Right.
I don't know how that influences manifestation, but it's what feels,
Hmm.
it makes more sense for me to go down that path, I guess. I don't know. It's very interesting for me to unpack kind of these concepts and these rhetorics.
Yeah.
But like it's like if we create our reality, then like how do we relate to our fear? Period. That's my question. Like
Hmm.
if every single thing that is moving through our mind is influencing the manifestation of our reality, then specifically how are we supposed to work with fear?
Right. Well, and how many women, though, have experienced fear of miscarriage or stillbirth, but they're holding their baby as
Exactly.
well, right? And it is interesting because I did relate to my fear of stillbirth my entire childhood, my entire life. Like this was just something that it was a reality that I knew, that I was aware
Yeah.
of. And throughout my pregnancy, I remember even speaking to my partner quite a few times, like, okay, if the baby passes away at whatever point in gestation, how are we going to navigate that together? How are we going to handle that together? Because this is a reality for people. And I know that it's a reality. And it was a reality for my family. And and I don't want that to happen. But how do we navigate it if that does happen? How do we show up for one another if that does happen? And for the life of me, I can't remember how those conversations went. I remember them being peaceful and relatively good, probably some tears, but I just remember like wanting to go there, wanting to explore how do we navigate this if that happens, you know? And yeah, I mean, I know so many women that, I mean, is that not such a core feeling of every parent to fear if
It
something's going to
doesn't
happen to your
go
kid?
away.
No, of course not. And so is every parent then manifesting her child dying, because the
Right.
fear is there? Like that doesn't make sense to me. But I
It
think
doesn't.
but I think just to make sure that we're still threading back to that initial statement of like our birth is a reflection of where we're at as women, as mothers. I feel like just that key piece there is the relation. How are we sitting with all these different potentials? How are we sitting with the fears that come up? Not
Yeah.
just are we sitting with them, but the way that you're describing that you hold your clients and different women that you work with, but how are we sitting with the fears that come up? Because there are so many different ways to do that, whether it's in a medicine ceremony or EMDR or all these different avenues, talk therapy, right? There's so many ways that we can navigate that, even art therapy,
Right.
right?
Right. 100%, you know, and it's like Yeah, what's coming up for me right now as you're sharing is like it is a reflection of where the woman's at. Like the statement is true in so many ways, but again, it's nuanced, and we have to be careful how we use it. And like,
Hmm.
if we're not gonna go into like a deeper discussion around it, I think don't use it, right? Like, if you're gonna sit at the feet of a woman and say those words, like, you need to be prepared to unpack it and really like, have a conversation around it because I think, certain rhetorics like this can be harmful. Even the rhetoric of everything happens for a reason, you know? Like, I know, like for every single person that's in grief, that rhetoric specifically is like bone grinding. Like it's like it
Bullshit. It is the fucking worst. Like, that's not what you want to hear at all.
the fucking paradox for me though is that me as like a 16-year-old in high school, and this is actually something I haven't shared on the podcast at all about my story, but as a 16-year-old in high school, I did this huge like piece of art and like put like wallpaper over it and wrote in big black letters,
Hmm.
everything happens for a reason, and had crayon melted all over it. And
Hmm.
so I had this big thing, and then my best friend died. So
Hmm.
that's a thing that I haven't shared. My best friend at 19 died in an accident, and
Hmm.
so that's been a grief has very much so been an informative of my path in a really massive way.
Hmm.
But so then I had to stare at this fucking piece of art that I made that that had those words on it, and I was like, yeah, and like the interesting thing is I hated it, and I was so angry about that statement in my early years, and
Hmm.
then 10 years later, right when I had landed in the Sacred Valley, I found myself in an ayahuasca ceremony, and that ayahuasca ceremony was the deepest, deepest, most authentic wave of gratitude that my friend died. And that ceremony, while I was in it, was confronting. I was feeling this, like, I could see everything he gave me through his death. And it was just like, thank you for all of these gifts. And like, also, like, the medicine teaching me and showing me, and like me feeling that connection to him of like, and you still exist. Your consciousness is still absolutely alive, and that was your soul's journey, and how selfish of me, and like, so I trust your path, and your path has blessed my path in all of these ways, and thank you.
Hmm.
And it was just like, oh, like it was such an interesting, experience. And then it's like, and then
Hmm.
after that ceremony I come back to that rhetoric, and I'm like, okay, maybe, but no, but like there is a reason, I
Yeah.
guess, for everything, and there is learning and growth, or the opportunity for learning and growth, at least in everything. And when you're staring at that rhetoric, in the depths of grief, specifically, that energetic,
Hmm.
it's, my experience and what I see you mirroring is, yeah, fuck that.
Yeah. Well, and I think the like semantic of what you shared is that you had to get there,
Right.
right? It's not for something to tell you or convince you
For
of.
somebody to tell you, right?
Exactly. The other piece is even if there is a reason, do we get to know the reason? Do we get to
Right.
know all the reasons? Is that for us to know? Can we grasp or comprehend the
Right.
reasons why something may or may not have happened? And then I was writing the other day and I was like, I will never be okay with the fact that my son is gone.
Right. You
I
won't.
will be at peace with how I grieve him, with how I relate to his death. I will never be okay with the fact that he's gone. That
Right.
will never be a thing that I'm okay with. And I say that full bodied, agreeing with it now, knowing that in 10 years, if I go to the sacred valley and I sit in a ceremony, maybe I'll have an experience like that. Maybe I'll have a
Right.
different
Maybe.
experience at a coffee shop. Maybe I won't. But I might
Right.
also, I'm just saying that to acknowledge the fact that I might also relate to his death differently in 10 years' time, 20 years' time. I may come to a place of feeling even a moment of full bodied gratitude for his passing because I do recognize right now that the the medicine that has come through Floyd's death is the most bitter awful, like I want to spit it out. I want to vomit it everywhere and get it out of my system. I don't want this medicine. But I recognize that it is medicine and not just for me. You know, I remember praying, and I've spoken to you about this, and I had a prayer throughout my pregnancy: healthy baby, healthy birth, healthy mother, all throughout my pregnancy. And we've spoken about this. You had that prayer as well. And I was so upset that it didn't come true. And everything was not like healthy baby. No, he died. Healthy mother. No, I was in a coma. Healthy birth. Absolutely not. It destroyed both of us. And why did that prayer not come true? I said it every day. I said it every single day. And some days I remember feeling fear as I was speaking it. Some days I remember feeling excitement. Some days I remember feeling gratitude. My emotional state was all over the place because, of course, you're pregnant, hormonal. And then it hit me, and I shared this on Instagram not too long ago. It hit me that I think that prayer actually did come true. Because Floyd died, because I'm sharing the way that I am, there have been so many mothers and midwives that have shifted in their birth, made a pivot in their pregnancy when maybe they wouldn't have because they thought about him or he visited them in a birth, either mom or baby. And now we have many babies that have been healthy, many mothers that have been healthy, many births that have been healthy because they reflected on him or because his spirit has gone to them. And so that prayer was answered, but it was pluralized instead of just healthy mother, healthy baby, healthy birth. It was healthy babies, healthy mothers, healthy births. It's been answered tenfold
Right,
more.
right. And you still get to grieve that that came at your expense in ways.
Yeah. And I can acknowledge that my story's not done.
Right,
And maybe that prayer will also be answered for me at some point. But there's just so much nuance, and there is so much anger and sadness and like, what are you talking about, God? I already lost my brother. I already experienced all of these other traumas. Why are you piling this on me? Why? You know, and that's where, you know, everything happens for a reason, and I can't know the reasons. You know, I as I said that, I was like, oh well, you know, when coal gets compounded, it turns to diamonds. Like, you know,
right,
I'm ruled by Saturn and it rains diamonds on Saturn. Like all of these pieces that I can try to formulate a reason for, like,
right,
oh, this is refining me. This is going to help me help other people better. This is going to help save other babies, but we can't actually know the ripples. You know, all we can do, all we have control over to a certain degree is how we relate. You know, so I wake up from a coma and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Holy shit. What am I going to do with? How am I going to meet this? How am I actually going to be in relationship with this now? And this is not a relationship I ever wanted to be in. I've seen this relationship my entire life of mothers still baking cakes for their children, even though they've been dead for 40 years, 50 years. Like, how do you relate to your child? You bake them a cake, you light candles, and they're not there to blow them out, you know, but you still honor them in all of these ways. And I think this is how, again, that statement is true of our birth is a mirror to who we are. Because I don't want to bypass any of these pieces too that could be true but difficult to hold. But there's these layers of, if an outcome is less than what we wanted, or it is very traumatic, or there is, you know, a death that occurs in a birth outcome, how do we show up to it? Do we speak to the doctors? Do we show up with honesty? Do we end up going down a religious or a spiritual path? Do we try to analyze it? Like all of this will show who we are at our core,
Right.
how we
It is
relate
a
to our
mirror,
trauma. And so
essentially.
it is a mirror,
Right.
you know? And I can
Right.
also see this like deep protection. Like when I see somebody in pain and they're hurting, I'm like, I want to do something to stop the pain. I want to keep them safe. And that was a
Right.
driving force in my birth choices. And I think that also prevented me in a really, honest and real way, prevented me from going to a hospital because I was like, hospital equals danger, hospital
Right.
equals trauma, hospital equals you're going to hurt my child and me. Not a chance.
Right.
And if we went to the hospital again, these are unknowns. I have no idea if things would be different or how they would be different. But
I
that
mean,
was a piece, you know?
one layer is that you feel safer in a hospital now, which is something that
Yeah.
only came through the experience of your birth.
Right. Well, I mean, and it's interesting because I don't feel safer in a hospital because I trust hospitals more, but I trust myself in a hospital setting more.
Interesting.
I trust myself to be able to ask the questions, to relate, to cultivate and create that safety with care providers.
Right.
But it's not a
But
blind
wouldn't you
trust.
say do you think that all I guess the question there is I see that in when you share specifically about um the care afterwards and how you sit down with questions and you'd really speak into those layers. But even just the experience of actually in the birth, and the way that you were met there
Mm,
and the way that
mhm,
you were cared for and prayed with and these types of things, that wasn't you kind of controlling that dynamic, you you got to experience the humanity of
yeah.
the people that were caring for you, which, for me, I guess impacts me,
Hmm.
in terms of wow, beautiful, they prayed with you. That's one thing that really specifically stood out for me. I wouldn't say that I had the idea or the belief that there wasn't good people in hospitals. My aunt and my cousin
Mm,
are, nurse and L&D nurse specifically, labor and delivery nurse. And I know that they're good people. And, specifically
mhm,
because I know them, I also know that they have connection to spirit and in these things, but so I would never I never had that belief that there's bad people in hospitals. I've always had the belief that good people with good intentions, are indoctrinated by an education system that isn't painting the complete picture.
mhm,
And that's not their fault, So I've always had compassion for that layer, but specifically I guess I have the assumption that there is a void or a disconnect with spirit for a lot of people in the Western world.
mhm,
And thus that would equate to there being a lot of, specifically scientifically minded people which orient towards the medical system,
mm,
specific even in that arena, that there would be more people that would be disconnected from spirit, I guess,
mhm,
and that's a bias and and so that was when you said they prayed with me,
mhm,
that was the thing that stuck out for me. It was they prayed with you, whoa,
mhm.
beautiful, that's incredible, that's amazing, specifically that thread. So
Yeah.
yeah, I and the way that you've spoken about that, I hear in the way that you share typically is that impacted you too and did kind of challenge a belief of your own. Correct me if I'm
Absolutely.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
And so the whys, right? It brings us back to we can't know the reasons, if everything happens for a reason, we can't know them all in any given moment, which calls us again to the integration process,
Mhm.
which I think is again an invitation back to this this piece. Birth is a
Yeah.
mirror.
Well, and just recognizing that as humans, we are meaning makers. We try to make meaning in every corner of our life. We try to understand and give purpose and reason. That's what we do, whether we're trying to find meaning through a scientific lens or a spiritual lens, or an emotional lens or a mental lens or a relational lens. We're trying to give it meaning. And I mean, there's so much beauty in that, whether
Right.
you make art from it or whatever it might be. But this is where, the way that I meet my birth and the way that you have met your births are different because I mean, the outcomes were
Right.
different, but we're different women, we're different humans,
For sure.
we have different life circumstances. But I think we, like that statement of it becomes a mirror, like we also get to decide. I mean, I'm just the image that I have right now, I'm just going to paint a picture is like
Love it. I love
I'm
mental
in,
metaphors. Give it to me.
I'm in an empty stone room. Like I feel like I'm in a castle and there's a giant mirror that I could like, if it was a portal, I could walk right through. Some say they are portals. And the outline is this like golden, beautiful, embellished, like it's like a tall, rounded top and like golden, brassy, embellished mirror, full length mirror. And I get to look in the mirror, see what I see, and then say, I don't like that outfit that I'm wearing. I'm going to wear something different. Or I want to put on makeup today. Or I want to have my hair up. Or, and just I have this visual of the mirror is not bad. It's not telling me anything. It's giving me an opportunity to reflect. It is a portal of reflection. And if birth is a mirror to who we are and where we are at, how I'm interpreting that now is birth is a portal of an opportunity to reflect on who and how and why and what we are. If I had a microphone, I would drop it, but I don't.
I mean, you literally nailed what I was thinking in that exact moment. Like what my mental metaphor was like, okay, I'm looking at a mirror and like I can choose the angle. Like I
Yeah.
could look at it straight on. I could
Mhm.
look at it or I could oh, that was not straight on. I could look at it from the side.
You can look at it
I
straight
could
on.
look at it straight on.
Yeah.
I could look at it from this side.
Yeah.
I can get another mirror and look
Hmm.
into that mirror and try to see the back of my head. We all remember that fun game in the 90s when we were trying to puff the back of our hair up all right, back combing it. Make sure there was no wild pieces hanging out the
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
But there's still, even in the choice to reflect at all, to even actually look at the mirror and consider the reflection,
Hmm.
there's the interpretations of what we're looking at.
And that was my, as you were speaking, I was like, right, because how are we talking about what we are seeing?
Right.
I was thinking about like any times that I'm feeling, ugly or bloated, if I'm like right before my period and I'm looking in the mirror and I think, ugh, like
A
don't like
hundred
how I'm looking, or oh
percent.
my God, I've got these scars on my belly now, or oh, I'm feeling this, or I'm too whatever, look at my stretch marks, or like, or am I looking at my body and saying, wow, look what you've been through. Look at these battle scars. Look at you
Right?
standing. Look
Hmm.
at you, the fact that you are standing at all. Look at that.
Right?
Look at your body still breathing after all that you've
I
been
was
through.
just gonna say that. Look at the breath coming in and out of your
Look at
lungs.
the breasts that still created milk, that
Right?
still so deeply desired to nurse your baby, even knowing that he's dead.
Right?
Look at this body that's been through so much. Can I look at you and see beauty?
Right?
And isn't that what birth is asking of us? Isn't that what death is asking of us?
Ugh.
Mirrors are so fucking powerful. They are like the embodiment of the liminal space. And I actually have a mirror by Floyd's ashes. And I'm only
Oh,
now
interesting.
really recognizing because I want to see my grief. And there's a really big purpose to that is when I sit with his ashes and the mirror is there, I see his mother staring back. And I can't hide how I show up.
Oh, I have goosebumps.
When I sit with his ashes and I'm acknowledging him and then I look up and I see the very real humanness on my face.
Hmm.
I don't want to hide from that.
Hmm.
And I just am now really, and I've known that mirrors are portals and we can go into like spiritual and
Right.
different layers to that, but they really are this embodiment of the liminal space that is birth, that
Right.
is death. You know, I can
Right.
I can look in a mirror and put my hand up to it and touch it. I can touch birth, or I can touch death rather. I can put my hand up and I can touch death, but if I'm alive, I'm not actually going through it. I'm not death. I will get there, but for now I can just touch the edges of it, you know? And just being these like embodiments of that liminal space, of those threshold spaces, and choosing how we get to relate. And I think that's something that I really want to be embedded into this podcast is anytime there's a quote that somebody shares on Instagram or in a book that's like, this is what birth is. Maybe for that person, but the question is, how does that make you feel? Does that bring something up for you? How are you relating to that? Because that is worthy of exploration. Whether you've given birth, you're about to give birth, you haven't give birth, you'll never give birth, you're about to, like, doesn't really matter. But just in life, when something comes up that is difficult or that is joyful, it is worthy of exploration.
Right. Exactly. And I guess, at the end of the day, each person gets to choose how deeply they gaze into their mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the reality is that everything and everyone, the world, our reality and our perception of it
Mm-hmm.
is a mirror. You know, I was speaking with a client today, who's struggling to embody the fullness of authentic expression.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking specifically about others' perceptions and how that like is a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the fear of that, of how we're being perceived, right?
Mm-hmm.
And specifically talking about the thread of like, look, that is their mirror to look in. The way that they see you, it's not you at all. Regardless of whether they see you as the most amazing person in the whole world, that still isn't you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a mirror for them to look in. It is their projection of what you represent to them, good, bad, and different, right? And so your authenticity is separate. Your truth is separate
Mm-hmm.
from what any singular or group of people perceive.
That is massive. That is
Right.
massive because even our projections, you know,
Exactly.
I'll look at
100%.
somebody and think that like I'm, calling ourselves out too. And as you were
100%.
talking, I was reflecting on, different people sending me like letters after Floyd
Hmm.
died with their criticisms and hatred. And as you were talking, I was like, right, none of that is actually me. Like that is all their own, like it really is
Right.
their own stuff. And I do it too. I might not write
Of
a
course.
letter. I might not write
Of
a letter
course.
and send it to a grieving mother. Don't get me wrong. Like,
Right.
I might not do
Yeah.
that. But
Right.
I project and I
Of
judge, and
course.
it's all my own shit. It's all
Me
me.
too. All of us do. Like I literally have been, it's been in my conscious awareness. Like I literally have spoken twice this week where I'm like, honestly, like I'm processing like a certain anger that like is unfamiliar. And
Mm.
like I'm starting to like have words to it because I'm like watching kind of the pattern of what's triggering me because my orientation is self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And so my projection that I'm struggling with right now is like the things that I've been like aware of since like let's say like I started kind of, opening my consciousness and, you know, living a different way. And that was around 17, 18, 19. Really, really the onset of it was at 19 when my best friend passed away. That was a really massive catalyst. But it was starting before then. Around this time, as I'm starting to have these new awarenesses come in, it's like, okay, those awarenesses, I'm how old am I? God, I think I turned 34 this year. Anyway, somewhere. I didn't think that was ever going to be an actual thing. I'm like, how do people forget how old they are? Like,
But we
what?
do.
Do we do?
We
It's a
do.
real
We
thing.
totally
The
do. I said
fuck?
I was 28 the other day. I'm like, no, you're not. You're 32. Like, girl, wrong decade.
Just about, yeah, anyway. I think I'm 34. I'm born in 1991.
Yeah.
Late birthday, fall birthday.
Almost
Okay,
34.
okay, yeah, all 30, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
33, turning 34. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So, I mean, almost 20 years that I've been dancing with certain concepts. And so with certain things, when I come up like against a person like telling me definitively that like GMOs don't exist or like, you know, just something like really, random that like
Mm-hmm.
has been glaringly obvious for me for a couple of decades,
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to get angry about it. I'm like, the fuck? Like, what do you need to be able to see it?
Yeah.
Like, this is me in my shadow here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. But naming it because it's something that I'm aware of and reflecting on, like it's like I don't actually like, and I can catch it and like be in conversation about it and like actually name like, okay, yes, and the reality is like some people's lifestyles have got more toxic and that's not all on them. There is the corruption in the food system. There is these little things
Mm-hmm.
that create, I'm shaking my phone for those who are listening, our cellular devices, which perpetuate a sedentary lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
where people aren't moving. They aren't moving their bodies. So to
Mm.
not move, I think that actually is actually the foundation, the core, is like we need to move our
Mm.
bodies. I think that the body is actually able to process like quite a fair amount of toxicity in all honesty, as long
Mm-hmm.
as we're moving it through and we're keeping our lymphatic system and our organs and our blood
Yeah.
circulating. So there are these things that are like stacked against people, and it's like, okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling this anger as though I want to project it onto people of like, hello, like wake up,
Mm-hmm.
which is very low vibe, like
Yeah.
acknowledging that,
Mm-hmm.
and stepping back and being like, remember the world that we live in. Like you
Yeah.
have stepped out of consuming certain foods all of that time ago and being on
Right.
this path of self-reflection and spirituality and plant medicine and
And
it's just
has
a
this
different
been
world.
coming up on your travels?
It was coming, no, it was coming up more before,
Okay.
honestly, like, and like a really interesting, actually, to speak into projection and just own my shit for everybody. One of my biggest projections was like interacting with the propaganda of like what specifically like America is,
Mm.
the entity on my social media from Peru. Like, I very much so perceive Peru as like kind of removed from the world,
Mm-hmm.
stage in many ways. And that makes me feel really safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, oh, I don't see Peru entering like a world war, or like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that happening, although there is instability in the government there, like in ways. My experience is that I feel really safe in my nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Like we left our door had our front key in it for 5 years in our old house. That's not the case anymore, but
Yeah.
like it's just like, yeah, it's like the sense of safety. And so I had a lot of fear about going to the United States. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was straight up in processes. I'm like, I think somebody's gonna like walk into a crowd with a gun. Like
Mm.
I don't want to be in crowded places. Like I literally had an agreement with my partner of like, we will not be in heavily crowded places in the US.
Okay.
And then I got to the US, and when I was actually there, I was like, wow, I was tripping, like
Yeah,
the
because you were in
reality.
Vegas.
I was in fucking, and that's why I was afraid. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like we're going to Las Vegas on the 4th of July. Somebody's gonna, shoot us.
That's when Tupac died. Oh my God.
Exactly. So like the projections of my mind to actually dysregulate my nervous system with the
Yeah,
frequency of fear, but like honestly being influenced by propaganda, right? Like I'm
totally.
only looking at like the school shootings and I'm only looking at, the presidential elections and I'm
Well, that's
only
what
looking
media
at
outlets show us.
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what, and this is why I think birth the middle way is so important. And you and I were talking the other day, like we're interviewing women who've had like really like nuanced and kind of like extreme birth stories. And we would like to
Right.
also interview people that have had like, you know, not to say that birth is ever middle of the road, but like positive outcome, easeful birth. I reached out to my friend the other day because she had a free birth. Her daughter's really healthy, and it was very like pretty textbook. It went really smooth. And I'm
Right.
like, do you want to come on, to like share these other stories as well that media doesn't do that. Like, I don't want to sensationalize birth or death. I want to talk about
Right.
like the realities. And the realities are that sometimes birth goes really smooth and really well and it's peaceful,
Right. Right.
and when I listen to, the Free Birth Society, they always talk about like, I'm thinking of one story in particular where like they had a woman come on and she had three very wild, bizarre births, like cord prolapse, footling breech, and like another like very long labor, like kind of in the realms of not even actually in the realms of normal. Like they were normal, the babies were fine, but like these very extreme cases. But what about the other ones that are textbook, that are healthy, that are, can we also talk about those things? Because in media outlets, oftentimes, the news headline that is the most sensational or activating or triggering is the ones that they want to put out because that's going to get more people to read. But birth, there's so many ways to birth,
Right.
you know?
Right. And it's a good point. Like I also don't like I feel like in ways it's like, oh, we want to create a space where like the full spectrum is
Hmm.
shown. And the Free Birth Society tends to highlight a lot of these like positive free births. And so like I don't want us to orient in the opposite direction of like,
No.
but to balance it out, like here's all
Hmm.
of the hard stories,
Yeah.
Um and so yeah, like I think that
Hmm.
I agree. I want to be, sharing the full spectrum of
Yeah.
what's possible and not just, the nuanced,
Yeah.
births.
Yeah. And on that note as well, if, for any listeners, please reach out with your birth stories. If you have something that you want to share, it doesn't need to be a massively traumatic thing. It can be anything. Birth is always so full of wisdom and medicine. And um, yeah, a goal with Birth the Middle Way is really, or I guess an intention, a goal, a focus, a pillar is to walk that middle path, to sit at the feet of women and their
Right,
stories and receive you,
right,
in however birth met you and however you met birth,
right,
however death met you, however you met death.
right, right.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that like that's just it, and I think more than anything in terms of what we're trying to highlight is just where humans are at,
Hmm.
and where each woman is at, where each mother is at, and you know, paint just a more full spectrum, and also we do have a prayer to bring fathers into the conversation and, you know, really just, yeah, share as full of a spectrum as we can while we share ourselves in this
Hmm.
interesting way, in this interesting space, it's a big thing. And yeah, like we're two individual women, just coming to this stage and to this platform with our experiences, and that's why I think in such a big way it's been so important to speak into certain concepts, while we're highlighting stories, but to really like do conversations like this where we unpack rhetorics that are floating around and impacting us all, there's so many women that are in the birth world and in birth spaces and
Hmm.
having just such a spectrum of experiences. And I feel like, a lot of the times it's actually the insecurities of who we are, when you were even speaking to the abuse and the violence thing and like how that was a self-worth thing, like it's a whole thing in and of yourself to even feel able to speak your truth, to even feel able to speak, to tell your story
Hmm.
can be an edge, and it's like if we need to feel as though we're like an authority on birth in order to speak about it, like I don't know that I'm gonna get to that place,
Hmm.
like I definitely don't feel like I'm an authority over birth
No.
in any way, shape, or form, I feel like
Hmm.
I'm a very humble student of birth,
Hmm.
and so it's important, to have these conversations in exactly this way of like, okay, let's explore the concepts. Let's be really real that this is where we're at and this is what we're
Hmm.
experiencing. And look at here's my perfect imperfections, right? Because it's so easy to hop onto an Instagram page or to hop on and just, see somebody only sharing the positives in their life. And
Hmm.
and that's a normal thing, and it's something that I always try to keep in my awareness and in sharing is to
Yeah.
like, how can I show up with my full authenticity, understanding that it's that very choice and orientation that sets others free, right?
Yeah.
It gives them permission to be exactly where they are, contemplating, being curious, making mistakes, having your shadows and your projections, even if you've done the work in those areas, and just here I am, in my
Yeah.
fullness. Let's show up
Yeah.
together and speak. So,
And people get triggered and upset. I mean, I had
right,
countless people say, "Hey, you're grieving. Keep that shit to yourself." So many
right.
times, like, "Why are you
Wow.
sharing this on Instagram?" And I'm like, "Because nobody does."
Right,
Because
exactly.
Instagram, we can't ever, like, what is authenticity on social media or even in a podcast, because I mean, you're only seeing whatever is in this square. You're
Right,
seeing the
exactly.
shirt that I chose to wear, I mean, I guess, and pants, but like, you're not seeing
Right,
me when I'm crying. I'm not one of those women that'll like have a big process and, set my phone up to film myself crying and post that on social media. I don't do that. And
right,
I'm not judging anyone that does, but that's just not where my head is at when I'm in an emotional process.
right,
But I will share my words because it's okay to show up in our messiness and in our humanness. It's okay.
right,
And I'm allowing myself to be seen in the unprocessedness
right,
of my grief. Why? Because that's human. And I think it
right,
does a disservice to only show up when we are fully healed, when we are fully integrated, when we are fully processed. I also recognize and understand that if we are not fully integrated and we share, that can also cause harm. However, as I constantly reflect and I speak on, hey, I shared this and this is what I think now. And I think there's room for us to be human in a technological world. I think there's
right,
room for us to be messy and flawed on a podcast and in all
right,
of these spaces. We don't have to show up perfectly because that's not reality. And as a
right.
Capricorn, Saturnian ruled woman, I do give a shit about reality.
Exactly. I mean, and I think we all do
I
in
think
some
we all
ways.
do. Yeah.
You
You
know,
know?
like and yeah, I do. I do think that we all do,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I guess to bring it full circle, birth as a mirror, life as a mirror.
Hmm.
It's all a mirror, like if we're willing to look into it, it's a mirror.
Yeah.
And, so just setting ourselves free, giving every single woman and mother listening to this who has ever experienced birth trauma,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
whatever degree, to whatever extent, like don't compare yourself. Don't compare yourself to Emma, like well, my baby's alive, and so, I can't feel my trauma or my grief, like that's not the point of these conversations.
No.
The point is for you to meet yourself and to give yourself permission. And also, if you've had a traumatic birth, it's not a mirror that is trying to say you're flawed and this was your fault. If only you had known better or done better, your the circumstance would be different. That is not it. The mirror is present in each moment. When you're in the birthing portal is your mirror in that moment. And the exact things that are coming through your mind, moving through your body, that's your mirror to look into in that moment. And you're only ever going to know the depth of the birth portal when you're in it. When you're on the other side of it, you're going to be relating to a memory, to an imprint of what it was, right? And so, and you meet that mirror with its
Yeah.
fullness and you look at it from as many angles as you can and you show up to the different awarenesses, the different medicine,
Hmm.
layers of medicine, grief, joy, excitement, gratitude, fear,
Growth.
anger, growth,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you meet it
Yeah.
all. Like that's the invitation, at
Yeah.
least.
Well, and to just add a little like stapling on or velcroing on, like redefining the word mirror, right? Redefining what that is. Because if reality is a mirror to you, that doesn't mean, like you said, that you're flawed or bad or anything. It's an opportunity. It's that pause when you inhale before you exhale. It's that opportunity to just get your bearings. What's here?
Right.
And a mirror is limited because it's only showing you a little bit. It's not showing you the entire picture, the entire
Right.
room. You can't trust
Completely.
every single mirror either.
Right. 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 The last thing that's coming up for me is, to echo, it's not a cause and effect relationship. And what that brings me to actually is the little soul in the sun. And I know that you're I
I
know you're
think
familiar with this story.
should we have a story time one day and we'll read that?
I think for sure. I
Like
have the book. I
I
have the
do
book of
too.
Peru.
We'll
I
read
have the
one
book
page
of
at a
Peru.
time.
Okay, oh my God. Okay, so for those that don't know, The Little Soul in the Sun is a children's book and it is so
It's
beautiful.
a parable
It,
from like an excerpt from Conversations with God by Neil Donald
Mhm.
Walsh. It's
Right,
get it.
get it. And so the reason, like, should I share or should we just wait? Because
Ooh.
I guess I'll ruin it if I go too
Yeah,
deep.
don't go too deep because
Okay, okay.
next week we're gonna tell you a story. We're gonna read the story.
Okay.
We're gonna everyone's
Okay.
gonna sit down. We're gonna have some
Okay.
tea, and then we're gonna read the story. We're gonna have story time.
Yes.
And if you're watching the video, we'll show you the pictures,
Okay.
and then
This sounds
we'll
great.
talk about it afterwards.
Okay. This sounds so great. So we're gonna leave you on the cliffhanger then. Dun, 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 but we love you.
We love you. Get ready for story time next week.
Don't hate me for it. Yeah,
No. And I
exactly.
also actually I would love to also read The Velveteen Rabbit on the
Okay,
podcast
story time.
because
All
that
right,
one
bring
is
your tea.
so I cried my eyes out reading that as well. There's another story called The Egg.
Uh-uh.
You don't know that one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we're gonna have a few stories, not all in the
It's gonna
same
be good.
episode, but throughout our time on Birth the Middle Way, um, we're
Awesome.
gonna read some stories.
All right, let's leave it on that. That's fun.
Okay.
Sorry, not sorry. See you next
Sorry,
episode.
not sorry.